Is testosterone important for both men and women? Well, I'm no expert, so I asked the experts all about it. And Dr. Amy B. Killen, she spoke to this on my podcast, and I'm going to put an excerpt in a second. And Dr. Anthony J, PhD, he did his PhD dissertation on sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, cholesterol, things like that. So these two people, when they speak, we need to listen and take it seriously. So let me just put in those excerpts from those podcasts. Flying into that heavily.
Yeah, and I read some similar papers, basically in the last 100 years, especially in the last 50 years. Since about the 1980s, our levels as a whole, population-wide for men, have gone down by about 1% per year compared to 1980. So we're looking at about 40% drop in testosterone population-wide just in the last 40 years.
So what impact is that going to have on a male's physiology? I mean, is it libido? Is it how lean they are, how alive they feel? What actually drives into that?
Yes, it's all those things.
Right.
It's also things that are even more important. We know that men who have lower testosterone levels, they tend to have higher mortality rates in general. So all-cause mortality is higher in men with the lowest quartile of testosterone levels. So we're going to see increases in things like cardiovascular disease, so heart attacks, strokes are going to go up generally if you have low testosterone, increased diabetes, increased obesity, increased problems with mood disorders, depression, insomnia, anxiety. All of that goes up as you have lower testosterone levels. And then certainly sexual dysfunction. So everything from low libido to low sperm counts and infertility are all associated with low testosterone. So it's not something that we should just brush off as being like, it's no big deal. Like, it's kind of a big deal. It actually means that our men are getting less and less healthy, and they're more and more likely to suffer from some kind of disease problem.
Right. Testosterone, Amy B. Killen. See how important that is? The older we get, the worse it becomes. It shook me to the core when I heard this, absolutely shook me to the core. So I decided to really dive deep into this. And Dr. Anthony J has shown conclusively that if you've got weak testosterone, you can raise that twofold in about 6 weeks. Is it a ridiculous idea to think that you can't do this? Have you seen my video about the geyser and how important a strong hormonal response is? Have you also seen my other video on how to make cortisol your friend and increase testosterone and DHEA at the same time? If you've seen those two videos, you'd know that it's possible. But this one here is showing you why testosterone is so important for both men and women. This research paper on screen here has got two extraordinarily important points. The first one is for men. Any men out there, you need to listen to this. This is going to shake you to the core, but you can fix this. This isn't difficult to fix either. So inflammation, right, is one of the causes of low testosterone. So if you got inflammation coursing through your veins, and most people have over 30, most men have over 30, it contributes to the development of hypogonadism. What does that mean? This big fancy word. I had to look this shit up too, don't worry. It simply means that your ball sack is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The machinery, the factories that make 70 to 80% of your testosterone are getting smaller. Does that shake you to the core? But guess what? I found scientists that have shown us how we can bring the guys back up, make new factories. The second part of this research paper here, it'll shake you to the core. Do you want to be frail? Do you want to have cardiovascular events? Low T concentrations are strong predictors of frailty. I don't want to be frail. Do you? Disability. I don't want to be disabled when I get older. Do you? Cardiovascular events. I don't want heart disease that negatively influence muscle mass. Hormones take care of that. When I interviewed Dr. Anthony J, this is what he found. When he did his PhD dissertation, he found a whole bunch of nasty ass chemicals that lower testosterone. But it's a double whammy because they stimulate the estrogen receptors. And this is the pattern, and he calls it the 7 deadly things: fat gains, depression and anxiety and apathy, not wanting to take life on, worrying about what other people think, all that bullshit. Weak hormonal response, not a strong hormonal response. If you want to find out how to get a strong hormonal response, watch that video. It should be information below, how to get a strong hormonal response. Hormonal disruption, immune dysfunction. So it's really important for 2020. This is the year of the COVID. Blood clotting, heart attacks, stroking out, cancer, enough said, infertility. So, back in 2009, the Endocrine Society, no less, put out a warning. Our government didn't listen. 2014, again, another warning. Our government didn't listen. Crickets. Crickets. And I've got this underlined here, as you can see I'm circling around. It produces insulin resistance. Now, just remember that, because when we go to testosterone in the coal mine, that'll make more sense. So these hard-working scientists have had to call them all funky names like obesogens, these chemicals, diabetogens, insulin resistance, cardiovascular disruptors, heart disease, but also stroking out. Do you know someone who is pregnant? Are you considering having a child? This research paper here, and there's many, many more like it, should be a point of concern. I'll just read off the abstract. There is widespread exposure to anti-androgens, a group of chemicals able to disrupt androgen action in fetal life, with irreversible demasculinizing consequences. Enough said. So our men are coming out weaker, smaller machinery to make testosterone, with irreversible consequences. So if you know someone who's pregnant, or you're considering having a child, you have to take these chemicals seriously, because they shouldn't be in our body. They're making us play a smaller game on so many levels. Energy, our vigor, our enthusiasm to take life on. These chemicals are crushing that in us. Now, this research paper here, Australian scientists are calling for a ban of a herbicide. This is just one chemical that the European Union, the European Union banned a lot of these chemicals in 2004. Now recall back up here, crickets, our government, crickets, European Union, banned, get this shit out now. It's no good for us. Right, so 3 points on the top here. Well, actually 4. I'll start there. So this research paper was 2007, and it goes over a 10-year period. So back to 1997. So this information isn't new. Our government crickets, European Union, ban it. Banned it. I want to go live there. First point, estrogenic. So for men, man boobs, getting fatter, prostate cancer, asthma, allergies, arthritis, heart disease, stroking out, all that shit. For women, the same thing, but breast cancer, but infertility as well, and demasculinizing the fetus, the unborn baby. That's what these chemicals are doing. They're anti-androgenic, which means DHEA and testosterone go down. Now, you saw how important testosterone is. These chemicals are making you physically and mentally weaker. And it seems scary, but it's not. You can easily fix this. And it's thyroid disrupting, which means your metabolism slows down. And I learned from some pretty smart scientists that when our thyroid comes down, it's very hard for our liver to clear out LDL cholesterol, so it goes up. Thyroid down, cholesterol up. But cholesterol's not a bad thing. Dr. Anthony spoke to cholesterol on my podcast. There's new research out there that you must listen to about cholesterol. And he's an expert on this. He did his PhD on this. So, since 1940, testosterone, when it started to be measured, has come down twofold. So the average levels back then to now are twofold different. So you'll go to your classically trained doctor, and your testosterone will be at, say, 350 nanograms per deciliter. And I'll say, that's fine. That's not fine. Dr. Anthony, an expert in this field, says if it's at 500, better fix it. It's a problem.
What should women's levels be at? Like, I think men's, my age, I'm 49, so I guess mine should be around about 800 if I'm correct.
Yeah, the most doctor, if you get below 500, I think it's a big problem. Better fix it, like immediately. Yeah. I agree. If you're 800, that's awesome. If you're 1,000, that's super awesome. It's hard to achieve, right? Yeah. And that's a big caveat people need to know. And I'm sure you've been talking about this too, where you can't trust the ranges on a lot of these things. Most people these days are obese, they're unhealthy. Yeah. That's not a good situation. You don't want to be in that normal range. In certain situations, testosterone is a good example. Vitamin D is a good example. Estrogen sometimes, right? So,
like vitamin D is a big problem too, because I know that DHEA is a vitamin D dependent enzymatic reaction. So if you don't have enough vitamin D circulating around, it's going to be pretty hard to produce testosterone in and of itself. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they've done studies. I was giving a talk for the Special Forces in America recently, and one of the scientists was giving a vitamin D talk on the importance of using it to bump your testosterone up.
Right, you should be, even my age, 49, 800 deciliters, nanograms per deciliter. Women should be around about 60. So, testosterone. You see this research paper that I'm circling around here now. Back in 1990, this is when testosterone really started to plummet. The late 80s when it was really started to plummet. So 1990, we were kind of lean, right? Testosterone takes care of that. 2018, look at the rate of obesity. Remember, testosterone takes care of that, and testosterone is down. So these chemicals are costing us big. As you can see there, this research paper speaks to how hormones, testosterone is the biggest player here, keeps you lean. So 4 points on this research paper, why testosterone is important. Significantly slows fat accumulation. Point number 1. Point number 2, improves insulin resistance, right? Which is extraordinarily good, especially if you want to slow down the aging process. Because when you've got insulin resistance, it pushes up a thing called AGEs. They age us at a cellular level, but also our skin gets older faster. We look older faster, but we feel older faster. That's what insulin resistance causes. Point number 3, testosterone has a primary anti-inflammatory effect. So if you got it at 800, you're protected from a lot of inflammation that's coursing through your veins. And point number 4, again, is related to point number 1. Significantly reduces fat mass. Now this poor gentleman over here to the right, I've got bad genetics and I should be like him, but I'm not. I've just got a hunger for how the body works and the mind works. And this gentleman here to the right, clearly got lots of testosterone. He's got a strong hormonal response. The poor guy to the right doesn't. He's apathetic. He doesn't want to go to the gym. He's thinking, why bother? He doesn't have the energy. Dude to the right, he is a humming and a popping, a strong hormonal response. Hormones control that. It's not calories in, calories out. That's all bullshit. So, how was that your fault? How was that your fault? Is it a ridiculous idea to think that these chemicals might have something to do with it? So this is step 1. Let's have a look at testosterone in the coal mine. Testosterone in the coal mine. So, right here. It's a very busy screen, but I'll walk you through it. So, The reason I call it testosterone in the coal mine is because I'm old school. Back in the day, coal miners went down a coal mine, and the deeper they went down, the more levels they went down, it got more toxic. And the canary carked it. All right, just like testosterone. Testosterone, I learned from Dr. Anthony J, is extremely sensitive to chemical stress, inflammation, all that shit. When it's just like the canary in the coal mines. That's why I call it testosterone in the coal mine. So let's have a look at these 5 layers of inhibition. And over here, pathway 2, if you've got down-regulation of this pathway 2, it doesn't matter what you do to these 5 layers of inhibition, you'll still be producing low levels of testosterone. You're still clamped. So very shortly, I'll show you how to unclamp that. So the first layer here, estrogen will shut down testosterone production. And guys may think, well, I don't have to worry too much about that. Yes, you do. These chemicals are estrogen-like. Every morning you wake up, you're drinking them, you're inhaling them, you're lathering them on, your cologne, deodorant, your soaps, all that shit. And that's not just where they are. You're actually cooking on them. They're everywhere. That's why you need to have an elimination plan. And testosterone will shut you down too. So people who take steroids like testosterone and those harder chemicals, it'll shut you down. And that shuts you down fast. So your meat and your ball sack will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's not a good thing. So these chemicals are making the machinery that create testosterone smaller and smaller and smaller. Are you happy with that? Do you want these chemicals to be making your ball sack that makes the testosterone smaller? Inflammation, chronic or acute. And if you're over 30, more than likely you've got chronic inflammation. And you can watch a video all about chronic inflammation and check out to see whether you've got chronic inflammation in what I call omega wars. Should be information below about how to access that. Now, any kind of stress, clearly, right? Environmental stress, so endotoxins coming in through the environment, but your body can fix that. You don't have to worry too much about that. And cortisol, so if you're scrolling through Instagram and something pisses you off, cortisol's going up, so you're chemically castrating yourself. Not a cool thing. Hypoglycemia. Now recall earlier I spoke to insulin resistance. That's what hypoglycemia is. These chemicals cause it, but the fatter we are, right, and the more carbs we eat, the more insulin resistant we are. Now, drugs, clearly, but these chemicals act like drugs. So they're causing inhibition here, level 1. Here, they cause inflammation and oxidative stress, level 2. Here, they cause stress inside the body, level 3. And they act like drugs, level 4. So all these chemicals are shutting us down. This is why testosterone has gone down twofold. And to speak to the metabolism, this research paper here I'm circling around, thyroid disrupting, which is your metabolism. So it's lowering your metabolism. All 5 layers, these chemicals. It's a ridiculous idea to think if you just fix this one simple problem alone that, you're going to produce a strong hormonal response day after day. And as Dr. Anthony spoke to, in 6 weeks, you can double your testosterone.
So I always tell people, get off the estrogens, because I've seen people double their testosterone in 6 weeks and just maintain it at, from 400 to 800, for example, just by removing these artificial estrogen chemicals on that top 10 list. So that's a good start. But then, of course, if you're exposing yourself to heavy metals in some way, you got to get those out of your system. And a surprising number of people have high heavy metals, and then they're on testosterone therapy, but they never hit the heavy metal problem. So eventually that's going to catch up to them.
But you also have to make sure that this KISS pathway, how cool is that? The KISS pathway, sex hormones. So you've got 2 things. The KISS pathway will be down-regulated when you've got this thing here, arachidonyl ethanolamine. You've got too much of that. So what is that? What is arachidonyl ethanolamine? Well, all the foods that we eat contain two fatty acids, and they turn into hormones in the body. So I call them omega hormones. And Western slave food, the Western diet, if you eat that, you follow that, and you've got no clue what these omega hormones are, you will have a high omega-6 to 3 ratio. So if you've got a 20-to-1 ratio, you've got a lot more of this arachidonyl ethanolamine, AEA, the omega-6. Again, up here, AEA downregulates this pathway. So you've got so much inhibition on this pathway. Even if you take all these layers of inhibition off, your body physically can't produce your God-given levels of high testosterone and DHEA. And this research paper here, basically shows you that both THC, which is cannabis, and AEA, arachidonyl ethanolamine, represses testosterone secretion. Right back over here, right? It's inhibiting this pathway. It's down regulating this pathway, so it's clamping it. So instead of producing 800 nanograms per deciliter, maybe you can produce 500. That's what it means. That's the bottom line. So you have to get your omega hormones back to balance, and your body can do this when you move away from Western slave food, and I've got another video on that. So right now, you'll have upregulation if you're in the green. This is worldwide data. So if you're in the green, you're unclamped. You're unclamped. But if you're even at a 10-to-1 ratio, you're clamped. You can't make high optimal levels of testosterone. 20-to-1, not good. And a lot of people have 30-to-1, really bad. And some people have 50-to-1. Can you imagine, even if they take all of the inhibition of pathway 1, they're going to think, I've done everything that this dude Mark Iron says, but I'm still producing low testosterone. Well, you've got inhibition on this second pathway. You need to fix that pathway. Does that make sense? So the next video you could watch is how to fix this omega balance, but also this one here is really cool. How your body actually creates testosterone. So you can upregulate and get to really high levels naturally for you when you know how to put these 5 steps together. All right? Making testosterone can be a double-edged sword. Even when you take all the inhibition of pathway 1 and fix pathway 2, over here, if you don't have adequate levels of magnesium, you can't make a lot of testosterone. If you don't have A-grade proteins coming into your body, like L-arginine, you can't make a lot of testosterone. If you're lacking this one vitamin here, MK4, you can't make a lot of testosterone. So even if you fix all those problems I mentioned before, you still will be producing low amounts of testosterone. Does that make sense? So is it a ridiculous idea to think that if you put all these steps into practice, that over 6 weeks, you're going to be up here with your performance hormones, so you got a strong hormonal response. And to add more bang for your buck, there's many things you can do with body language that's been shown to upregulate testosterone DHEA, and also mindset, the way you think. You can start producing DHEA and testosterone by thought alone and by body language. These hardworking scientists have given us those clues. If you want any more information on anything you've heard here today, drop a comment below. I'm more than happy to help and point you to a video that will help you do that. I've made so many of these videos. I've got a private stash for my customers. If you want access to that, reach out to me and I'll show you the private stash, and I'll give you a couple of them for free, depending on what you want. Because, I'm a stress hyperresponder. I'm not supposed to produce a lot of testosterone DHEA, but I do, because I've got all this right. And it's because of these hardworking scientists. And I'm just like a bulldog. I want to know how to get this right. If you've liked this, give it a thumbs up and drop a comment below. And as I will always say, health and happiness, that comes first.